Good afternoon, Byron. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Deji. Thank you for having me this afternoon on this very important platform of yours. I'm looking forward to listening to what you would like to tell me or that I can contribute.
Yeah, very much so. I know we've been maybe talking for some time now. It's good to have this section. So I think for this section, I know you're a man of many colors. But I think I wanted to focus more on your business, social housing, supported living, um, anything to do with social impact investment that you're currently into. Maybe at other parts, we will do some other sections because I know from the little I know, you've got different angles that will be very interesting. But for the audience, I wanted to do series on social impact investment. What does that space mean? There's a lot of buzzword around supported living now. Everybody trying to get into that. Children housing, children accommodation, all of those. So we're going to welcome you because you've got experience in that field. Tell us how we all started and what have you been doing in this space and what does the future looks like. So that's possibly what we're going to cover on this. Possibly we will have another section that will cover some other spots. So just as a welcome, just tell me introduce yourself and what you do exactly.
Okay, so my name is Byron Fundira. I've been a property investor in the predominantly in the United Kingdom since 2001, when I bought my first property, which was a residential property, but then accentuated into buy-to-lets and from 2004 until the peak of the credit crunch in 2008. There were still some deals that I completed in 2009, but at the peak of the credit crunch in 2009 is when the things kind of plateaued for me. Um, Out of that property investment, I managed to build a sizable portfolio of properties from obviously personal education and also learning from others who would share their experiences and how you can accentuate your income through property. Um, but I then had kind of because my background was in the healthcare sector in the United Kingdom, so I was working in the healthcare sector as a nurse, psychiatric nurse for that matter, mainly community based. And one of the things that kept driving me, or that I kept yearning for, was how do we make the livable conditions for people going through whatever situation they may be experiencing better. And that was the drive that ended up me starting um, a social housing company, um, a care and social housing company, the health and social care and housing company called Chiltern Support in 2008. So it was also ironically around August 2008 at the peak of the credit crunch when we commenced business operations. Um, but because my drivers were more around giving back uh, and and wanting to make a difference, I kind of became oblivious of everything that was happening in the financial sector, um, just because of that drive. And that company has built up now for the past 17 years to where it is now. Uh, and the health and social care housing sector in the United Kingdom has evolved a lot from the 2008 when we started up to now. When we started, very few lenders would be interested in doing that because of what they perceived were the challenges with the sector.
Sure.
Um, that's from a financial or financing aspect. So, and hence, I started by using my own personal portfolio. Like I said, I had started investing in property in 2004, and built a portfolio, a sizable portfolio of properties, which I then utilized for the health and social care business that I started in 2008. So I started utilizing those properties uh, as placements. Then came the legislative platform, which a lot of people, I think, who are starting off have to navigate as well. Uh, the UK health and social care, especially supported living sector, um, has an emphasis on a separation between the accommodation provider and the care provision, mainly for so that there is no conflict of interest between whoever is housing the person and who is providing their care. And this stems out of the overarching ethos that despite individuals who may have needs and their challenges that they experience, they need to be treated like every other person with the same
Yeah.
tenancy rights and tenancy obligations that everyone else has in the community. So that's the standpoint of that. Um, and there is a paper which is often passed around, which is called the real test. That's often uh, uh, someone providing property in that sector has to meet in terms of criteria. So that's really was the genesis of me starting on this journey. It's still a journey I'm on, and I'm still carrying on. I don't know whether that has answered how I got there.
No, definitely. That's given a very good detailed background into that. And I think you've pointed quite a few important things. But I'd like to maybe take it a bit further just to delve into, um, in a very unique and special way, you connect both division of this industry. You have the housing element through your building up your portfolio, and you have the care provision as well. So for this, well, if you could just explain what does that mean for someone, because most of the people either want to provide the housing for providers to be able to use. That's one segment of people. Some people want to go into the full scale to say we would buy our property, we would get the CQC license and all of that is required for us to be able to operate both. So maybe for those two segments, if you could just talk about that a little bit for people that just want to focus on as a landlord, I want to give my property to someone like yourself to operate on, and for someone that wants to do everything combined. And what's the big difference in both angle?
Okay, yeah. So I'll start with those who are interested in just being property owners or property providers to the sector. It is a very, in my view, a very good way to um, leverage your business and on many fronts. Once you find a reliable provider who you can work with, you are almost guaranteed your rental income because the provider doesn't want um, to be turfed out of that property. And most providers want long-term leases.
Yeah.
Uh, there are properties that I've, because I then in the end through expansion had to lease some properties. And there are properties I've been leasing now for 12 years or plus. And those landlords are very happy because they know that I'm not going to go anywhere. What also a provider has to take into consideration when they're leasing your properties, if it's a suitable property, it becomes those people who the vulnerable people's home. And
Yeah.
so they want a longevity in that. So, which is what most landlords would want a long term lease
Yeah.
as long which is paid for, so you don't have to worry about remarketing, void periods, and so forth. because you know that you've got a tenant, a sitting tenant who is in for the long term. So that's one of the big positives for most people who want just to lease to social housing. The second one is, as I said, you have a sitting tenant who will pay rent uh, and will hardly default because they know, again, the importance of getting that tenure with you. And then there aren't the challenges again of thinking about the eviction process, because most landlords worry about having tenants that are not paying rent and then having to go through a protracted eviction process, which costs a lot of money. In the United Kingdom, that process can last up to 6 months before you can get a tenant out. It just depends on the court process and where you are, especially if the tenant will not leave just on a Section 21 notice. Or yeah, so that's where I think those who want to just provide the properties, this is quite a lucrative market. You can also, depending on your negotiation skills, maybe charge a slightly premium rate of rental above the normal LHA rates, because you have you've got a commercial, almost a semi-commercial arrangement with the tenant, so that also can leverage your capacity to earn from your property. So those who want to just lease out their properties or who want to just be the property providers, this is quite a lucrative sector for them. And I'm sure you'll be happy to link up and I'm happy to work with you to link up with some providers who are looking for properties for those who want to do that. Looking at the second aspect, which is the model that I've been running, it has its ups and downs. I'll talk about the ups first. Again, that security of tenure is very important. So if you have your own properties, you are almost doubling. The legislative framework frowns on that, though, because they don't want the conflict of interest of you being the property owner as well as being the care provider. They want a separation. So how I managed to navigate it was to set up entities, SPVs, and be able to, when I say SPV, special purchase vehicles, work with those to do the purchasing of the properties. And then there was a separation because company law treats each company as a different entity, right? That there may be directors or shareholders intermingled with that. It then also enabled the process, or the smoother process of making adaptations, because sometimes you also need to make adaptations to the properties to make them suitable for the individuals that want to live there. And then made the decision making around making adaptations much simpler and easier, because if there's an independent landlord, the landlord may be wary of you making too many adaptations to their properties, widening the doors to allow wheelchair access, putting in things like tracker hoists, which some individuals may need, and any other adaptations that may suit the individuals who want to live there. So that for me, it made it easier to do that because I was already in the property. The other thing that the regulator, you mentioned CQC in your question, the regulatory body CQC also expects a certain spec of environment for individuals. So a minimum of 12 livable square meters per bedroom, and suite facilities. Sometimes they will also require that you have, depending on the needs of the people that you are going to look after, you have things like TMVs, which are thermostatic water valves, which limit the temperature of water to avoid scalding accidents and so forth. All these adaptations, again, will require money and funding.
Yeah.
you don't necessarily get that funding from out there, but you can obviously work with a provider, or if you are the provider, then it makes it much easier to make that investment into the property to make sure the environment is suitable. So that was why I went for the model of dual, um, and then which has worked well for me. The fourth aspect is maintenance. Most of the individuals we support have, because of their needs, are not so careful with properties. So most landlords, again, if you are leasing from a landlord, the landlord will just say, I'm giving you a property. They do an inventory. This is the state that my property is in. When you when you when you're ready to move out, I'll go back to my inventory, to my check-in inventory, and want my property in the same state. Now, if you've got individuals with particular needs where they may damage walls, um, and so forth, that means that it's imperative on the provider, the care provider, to ensure that those damages are catered for, which can affect their cash flow. You see. So that's the fourth reason why I think the model for dual may outpass the model for individual from lending from um, housing providers.
Thank you very much on that. So, the other thing I wanted to point out is maybe you might be aware as well, maybe you're not, because you are an operator and also housing support. It's becoming a very popular topic on social media, and everybody wants to get into supported living, supported housing, and the similar stuff. And like anything, similar to what it was like when people were jumping into service accommodation and stuff, there would be some problems along this journey and stuff. And maybe you're looking at it and feel like, okay, yeah, you've been on this for 15 years going. What should people be aware of? Either they're doing the model of just renting it out as listing it, or they are doing the operation for themselves. What would you caution people on, because to be honest, it's becoming like everybody is doing supported living. It's not like they are, but that's just the feel on social media now. What should people be cautious about, coming from someone that is experienced in this sector from both angle over the last 15 years?
Okay, so from the perspective of the housing providers or the landlords, I would always say do your due diligence first and be very thorough with your due diligence. Um, don't just look at who is going to pay me the highest amount of rent or who is going to offer me a high amount of rent, because the challenge you have is because that company or entity that has moved into your property, um, if they're not a reliable, suitable provider, or they fall under for whatever reason, or are not able to provide to pay your rent, you are left with a tenant who is deemed by the system as extremely vulnerable, so very difficult to evict. At the same time, um, if the company that has put that tenant in that property either fails to pay the rent or fails to meet its obligations, it will be very difficult for you to get to evict that person. You'd have to go through a court and just right. So, and that could be even a protracted court battle, because even after the court has made the hearing, they cannot make that person into homeless. They would have to wait until an alternative provision has been identified,
Yeah.
and then move that person on. So that's one challenge people need to be wary of. Um, it's also important to work with providers that are in the sector for the right reasons. Some people want to get into the sector because they're looking for a quick buck. My experience in this sector is that it's not an overnight business where you just make money quickly. It is something that you have to look at from a long-term perspective. And yes, we all go into business to make money, or to make some profit, but it is very important that the ethos of the organizations that you work with are organizations with the right ethos, where there's commitment and dedication to the service provision. And this will come back. Key pointers are even things like maintenance. How particular is the provider going to be about your property, about maintaining it, about ensuring that any repairs, you don't want again to be called every time a light bulb breaks, because the rate of breaking light bulbs by especially people with special needs is quite high. Light bulbs, windows can be broken very frequently. But if the provider is not prepared to uh, invest in that, then it all falls back to you because you are the owner of the property. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
But on the positive side is, like I said earlier, is that you can have, if you do your due diligence well, you can have good tenants who want to be in your property for the longest period of time because they don't want to be hunting for new properties all the time. They are fully busy with the people they're supporting, not to want to be actually looking for properties, searching, moving from one property to another, which causes a lot of disruption. Some of them, depending on their needs, they may end up getting quite disturbed by constant moving. So most providers don't, once they've secured a property, they don't want to leave. So if your strategy, which then comes back to what is your strategy? Is it a strategy of long-term lease, or purchase, secure, hold, and lease, or is it a strategy of buying, getting equity, and then flipping the properties? So depending on your strategy, if it's I would say people who have a strategy of purchasing and holding, this model suits them better.
Okay. Just quickly, I know for people that might not be aware, you've mentioned vulnerable clients quite a few times, which is essentially what social housing is. On your settings, what type of vulnerable clients do you cater for? If you could just speak into that quickly.
Oh, because we've been in the sector for a long time, it's quite a wide range. We support people with mental health issues, so people who've had severe and enduring mental illnesses, schizophrenia, bipolar affective disorder, mood disorders, even to obsessive compulsive disorders. Some of them even have personality disorders. So different types of disorders which we cater for or support with. That's on the mental health spectrum. Then on the learning disability spectrum, again, we have people with different conditions, from Down syndrome, autism, which is a spectrum. It varies from people who are very low functioning to highly functional individuals, who are deemed to have Asperger's syndrome. So these are extremely intelligent people who have just struggled with social skills and other deficits that the triad of deficit of autism identifies in them. Then we also support people with what we call physical disabilities. So people who have been in road traffic accidents or some form of accident. Some of it are neurological accidents, and they often end up with what is called an acquired brain injury, which is a damage to any part of the cerebral nervous system. So the cerebral nervous system comprises of the brain and the spinal cord. So some people it may be that it was their spinal cord that was damaged and not necessarily their brain, but they end up still having these symptoms of ABI. So that is another sector that we support a lot. We work very closely with NHS bodies and hospitals, especially neurological hospitals, to support those individuals to transition back into the community after their rehabilitation. So I've just mentioned a few, but those are the three main ones, that main classifications. I've always had the firm belief that you can't compartmentalize people into compartments. Yes, formal diagnosis, that's how we kind of separate people, but each person, my experience, comes with their own individual character and individual symptoms that they exhibit. So it's often about adapting our approach to their needs rather than making them fit into a set criteria, so to speak.
Yeah, so just listening to all the terms you just mentioned and all the technical stuff, I feel like, whoa, if you don't love, if not for the passion and the expertise you have in this is definitely a very tough industry to go through. So it's just for people that are seeing this as a quick win solution. Like um, if you're going to the care element part of it, there's a lot. I mean, there's different types of vulnerable clients you could be dealing with, and you better be ready for all of just what you mentioned. So, thank you. I think again, one of the reasons why I'm very interested in doing this is because um, from a property and a mortgage point of view, uh, we've worked together to sort out some of the finances on some of your projects. But more importantly, I think if you think a wider spectrum, you realize that there is a deficit of supported and social housing in the UK. And but what I'm trying to do is as much as people that can understand this market more, not thinking it as a quick win, that as the interest of the vulnerable clients at mind, either providing and working with providers like yourself to create the solution, because we know the government cannot support all of this, which is the reason why they are partnering with social housing and the care providers like yourself. So that's really one of the things. So I've just want to highlight that for any landlord out there that's interested in these things called social housing, I would say take some time to understand it. But the best approach to kick things off is to start with someone that knows what they are doing. Like they said, follow who know road. And definitely, I've seen what you do. I've seen your passion, even from what you've been discussing so far. I've seen your passion in this industry. You're just not coming to just make the money. Um, but you're coming to make a difference in the industry. So, and thank you so much for leading in that. So, just another question. I mean, over the years, I know we've not touched on again when you say success, you want to understand behind every of those success there is a journey, and we've highlighted the good of those journeys and stuff. But sometimes they might be the bad, they might be the ugly. What are the memorable stuff that still stick with you till today that you feel like if you know better, you wouldn't be in this industry? What are the mistakes, maybe one or two that you've made along the way that have possibly maybe almost crumbled your business or shaped the way you've been running your business? If you could just share some light on that, because I just don't want people to go away thinking, yes, this is all good. I know we work behind the scene, and I know how much I know how much time you put into this. I know what hours you are awake and stuff. So, what are the things that you feel like, wow, this is the mistakes, but maybe you've lived through it? So, maybe you could give us one or two examples. That would be very appreciated.
Okay, so to start off with, you just mentioned about the need for commitment and dedication. I always say it's a privilege to be entrusted with people to support and look after people who are people's loved ones who are very vulnerable. So it's a responsibility that one has to take very seriously. and has to take it with full heart and dedication and commitment. It's not something that you can just say, I'll devolve to somebody else. It's a it's a full day, daily, weekly commitment where you have to be responsive to those needs. You have to be responsive to your staff. We have to be responsive to what is happening in the sector in terms of the wider sector, the government objectives, and be aware of all those things that yeah, are driving the sector. When I say that, there's a lot of expectation, rightly so, on providers to deliver where others have failed. Uh, it's you have expectations from family members, you have expectations from social services who may be commissioning the person to your service. If you are also working with the National Health Service through what are called continuing healthcare teams, there's also expectations from those commissioning bodies that you work with. So there are contractual obligations that you have to meet in terms of service delivery. Further to that, there is the regulatory body, the Care Quality Commission, which has been set up for the right reasons to ensure that the quality, as in its name, Care Quality Commission, the quality of the service provision has to be of a very high standard. So these are the things that you have to navigate around. Then you have the challenges with workforce. Um, I say challenges, but there are also opportunities as well. If you invest in your workforce and in their development, they can be your business greatest strength. But if you also do not invest in that workforce and they do not deliver on the expectations, then they can be also your biggest drawback in your business. So the sector has what I would like to describe as a very nomadic workforce. When I say nomadic, it's the people come into the sector for different reasons. Some people, it may be a starting point in their journey through life in the UK, where they find the sector is a low entry point for them to get into because there is minimal qualification requirements. So they can't just walk into a mortgage brokerage firm and say, I want to be like Deji, for example, right? The mortgage brokerage firm would have to look at what qualifications have you got, what experience have you got in the sector for them to be even considered for an interview. Whereas in the care sector, if you just walk in, no matter what your background is, you can be considered for an interview, right? And depending on your performance and your ethos, most of the people that we work with, they were very new to the sector, but through training and development, we've been able to develop their skill sets to deliver the right service for people. So that's that. The workforce is one of the biggest challenges, I must say. Maintaining that workforce, keeping the workforce, ensuring that you are meeting people's needs and that the expectations are being met, so that they can deliver the right service to the people you support. So I always say our workforce is our greatest asset. We continue to invest in them, continue to invest in their development, and to work through the different challenges that people may experience. Again, people are not static. People have ups and downs in their lives, and it's very important that you are there for them to support your workforce when they need that support. So for me, the biggest challenge has been the development of the workforce. The other variables, if I may put it that way, are much easier to deal with. The other obviously continual change that continues to happen is the legislative framework or the framework that the government wants to deliver. So each government comes with a different set of agenda. So when government change, which happens very often in the United Kingdom, I think in the time that I've been here, I've been through, is it not 10 prime ministers? So each prime minister will come with even if they are from the same party, they will come with their um, own ethos around how things need to be done. And
Sure.
so because of that, it becomes a way very important that you are aligned to the government objectives, because the government wants to achieve certain things for the sector. Um, so that's the next navigating through the legislative framework and being aware of where the government, what direction the government is going, is also another challenge that we have to navigate. Lately, and as much as, yes, you said earlier that there is a big buzz around the sector, lately the current government has come in to reduce uh, funding for the sector. So they are trying to claw back the deficit that they feel they inherited from the previous government. And one of the areas that is being experiencing severe cuts is the health and social care sector.
Thank you very much. Before, just thank you for highlighting the challenges, but I'll circle back to my question about um, the mistakes or something that will be a learning point for others. But just for context, just people to understand this. I mean, some of this I know already. In terms of workforce, maybe just quick response on those. In terms of workforce and your settings, how many workforce do you run in the UK so that people could understand the size of your operation, and also how many settings do you currently manage across both leased
So,
and portfolio?
so total workforce is about 246. Exact number, which I got on Friday, was 246.
Yeah.
So it fluctuates between 250 and 240 thereabouts. That's the total workforce in the United Kingdom. Um, this is across 17 service units at the moment, um, which range from Buckinghamshire, where we started, to North London, where I am right now, to South London in covering Sidcup, Gillingham, Bexley, and then Croydon as well, and then going further afield in Kent to Gillingham. Yeah, so we've got Buckinghamshire, North London, and then South London, in the areas that I've just mentioned, and then in Kent.
Thank you very
And
much
we
for.
also and we also includes Manchester as well, Rochdale.
Okay, so just I mean that shows how much you've been involved in this. I know managing a workforce of 246 across that sector, that's a big deal. And I know you mentioned in the UK, this conversation is about this. I know you've got other investment and other things you do, but let's not talk about that today. 17 units across different borough and different geography, which is a whole lot of work. So you're putting in the grind. Well done on that. Just to circle back to my question, so what are one or two mistakes that you've made through this journey that you've learned from or people can learn from?
Okay, so yes, there are plenty of mistakes. If you run a business, it will be folly or be a big misrepresentation that you've not made mistakes. Mistakes that I've made, one would be very early on we leased a property um, in my desire to put the people we support into some of the more affluent areas where we happen to lease a property in an area which is very high end in North London, called Hadley Wood. And the landlord, because we're leasing, because these are very expensive properties, minimum purchase price is at least £2 million. To start off with, was very, very much amenable to to us, to what we were doing. But because we were in the midst of people with expensive properties, they started petitioning him to get us out. Um, because, first of all, and being a person of color, we were not blending in very well. That was the first thing. Then, obviously, because we are looking after people with needs, um, that did not seem to augur well with that community.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the landlord ended up buckling. But the mistake we did, and I remember, I think I pre-warned people around the fact that you can't just move people with vulnerabilities overnight. So he gave us a month's notice. We couldn't move people out within the month, so we asked for an extension. And at the 11th hour, just before the contract expired, he then said, "Yes, I'll give you another extension for 2 months." And I was excited to say, "Oh, at least I've got sufficient time to make my arrangements." But in my excitement to go and sign for the extension, he had put a clause in the contract that it was now being going to change to what is called a full repairing lease. So it was one line which just said this extension means that the tenant will now be under the terms of a full repairing lease. I may have to turn off my camera for a bit. Um, so that became a very big. So when we then finally managed to find alternative provision and we were about to move, um, the the landlord then said, "You have to repair my property and put it back to the state that it was in, and also repair everything else that is damaged on my property, whether it was pre-existing." Just bear with me 1 second.
That's fine. I just got myself plugged in as well.
So he puts a full repairing list. So he converted the contract to a full repairing list. And so when we were about to move out, he said, "You have to repair everything about my property, from the drains that had issues to the roof to everything." We did that. We found some contractors. Even he demanded that we restore some things and we spent quite a bit of money and thought we had achieved the objective. Only afterwards did he get what are called they're specialized quantity surveyors who came in and said there are still these problems with the property. So then he took me to court and I ended up with a lawsuit for $250,000 to repair that property. So that was one mistake that I've had to live through, and only managed to finish paying it about from 2015. Only managed to finish paying it, paying off that commitment 3 years ago. So up to 2022 is when that went on. It went on for a full 7 years. So that's one caution that I would always say: make sure you read all the fine print in any document that you sign. Make sure you are very clear about what your obligations are. If you need to seek legal advice, do seek the necessary legal advice at each point. That's one precaution that I would urge anyone going into this sector, because there are things that people will do that could be very costly to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
The second aspect is that I wanted to mention is around aspects of making sure that you're always compliant with the regulatory bodies. Now, that also entails a lot of work. So, being prepared with the regulatory for the regulatory bodies inspections, if you are going to be registered with the Care Quality Commission. As I said, the organization was set up for a very good thing to ensure the quality in the sector is always maintained, and you always need to be working to ensure that that is delivered by your workforce and everyone around you, and equally make sure that the reportings that are required are done on a timely manner to protect the vulnerable adults that you'll be, or vulnerable people you'll be supporting. So that's those are over the years some of the shortcomings that I can report on in terms of the properties themselves. Again, the agreements that you go into as a either a provider or housing provider or property provider, make sure that they protect you. Um, and what I mean is, from a housing provider perspective, make sure that if you are uh, going to have any changes or adaptations made to the property, to your property, be comfortable with them, because you don't want to be in breach of your mortgage terms and conditions, for example,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes some mortgage providers will say you need to notify us of any changes, any adaptations to the property. So you want to make sure that you are aligned to that and that you don't end up breaching the mortgage terms and conditions of, or the terms and conditions of your mortgage. Um, that's one of the critical areas that you also need to be wary of. Equally, being open and transparent with the lenders. If you are going to accommodate vulnerable adults, there may be alternative mortgage products, which I'm sure Deji can work with you to find that are suitable for the sector. Don't just go and say, I've got the mortgage already and I'll carry on with that mortgage product, because it may end, that can also backfire on you in the future. If things go wrong or there's something wrong with the property, you may not be, your insurance cover may not cover that aspect. So if, for example, God forbid, the property burns or whatever, you will not be covered, because if the insurance is not suitable. So these are some of the things that working with a specialist mortgage provider like Mr. Nehan here, he will be able to guide you, and you can navigate through those aspects with him to make sure all your ducks are in a row, so to speak.
Thank you, Byron. I think if nobody has gotten any value from this, then yeah, and this is the reason why I know being successful, it's a very good thing, but the journey itself. So the 250 quarter of a million mistakes you just help anybody else to avoid. Because naturally, people would think, yes, I understand this contract, I've seen this before, something. But your situation was peculiar because if it was the first time, possibly you would have gone through this in detail. But it was just you were in a situation you needed to act quickly. There are other things that is nudging behind the scene that just made that thing slip. So sometimes people need to be aware that it's, I mean, quarter of a million mistake could just be locking just in the most minute things that you don't actually see until it happens. So thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable on that, because I think that would help a lot of people. On the regulatory bodies, I think without saying, this is a regulated sector. You want to do everything in the right way. You want to make sure that you have the suitable support, suitable regulatory policies, and everything that you need. And talking about mortgage, I think, and this is one of the reasons. So there's a lot of popularity about this, and some trainers are saying you can use your current mortgage, but a lot of people are not aware there are dedicated solutions for this sector in terms of getting a mortgage. So thank you for highlighting that. I think it might look like you are saving some money now, but in the future, just a situation where a lender wants to pull out their mortgage and you have vulnerable clients, you just possibly would look very bad in terms of the commissioner you're working with and stuff. So there's just a bigger impact it could have on your business if you don't have your housing in the right place. So thank you for sharing all of that. I know you need to run. Just while we got you, I'm going to add some of your details on the show notes, and where people can contact you and stuff. Uh, I have two questions I don't want to run away with. One would be, if you have to start, what would you do differently? Maybe we could do that quickly. But on that, the next one will be, what are the opportunities you're looking for? What is the next move for you? What are the opportunities for partnership that people could work in this sector with you? I see you as someone that has been successful in this sector. You know what you're doing. You understand the regulatory. You understand everything. Is there any opportunity for people that wants to come in from different angle? And what does that look like? So I've given two questions just because of the time. What would you do differently if you're starting this all over again? And what are the potential partnership opportunities that people can leverage working with you?
So yeah, if I were to redo this again, obviously a lot of in the beginning, a lot of what I did was self-funded, which kind of constrained me in terms of the trajectory to develop. Um, However, having said that, it had its ups and downs, but I think now, with what I know now, I am very much aware that I could accentuate my trajectory much faster with the various finance structures that are out there. So, utilizing that, equally being braver, I would be braver now. I was initially very wary to purchase properties in London because of the high price tag, but actually the London area has a lot of opportunities if you buy the right type of property in the right location. And that is something that I would obviously not hesitate if I had the opportunity to redo this again. Um, I see a lot of positive developments that have happened in London with property investment and development. And so, and as much as the asking prices in London may seem prohibitive, but the opportunity to accentuate the earning potential of your property is even higher in London than in other areas. That has been my experience. You know, my observation. If I were to look pound for pound what I invested in other areas, if I had invested that money in London, I would have been. It would have multiplied 2 or 3 times from the time that I started in 2008. But yes, there has been obviously equity that has been built in those assets, but it has not been as exponential as has happened in properties in London. If I look at what I invested in pound per pound in between 2004 and 2008, yeah, the trajectory would have been different. So, not I'm not someone who can predict the future, but the numbers never lie, is what I always say. Anyone who is starting on this journey, if you can look at where you can get better return on your money, London always outperforms other areas in many ways. So that's one thing that I would recommend, or I would suggest to people, not recommend, but suggest. And then in terms of people partnering, yes, we have a franchise scheme that we are running where people can join part of a franchise. And you then get the benefit of all the 17 years of experience and many more because we've got team members who accumulatively, I would say, there's 100 years of experience across the sector in our team. So you would get that opportunity from different people with different experiences, and who've walked this journey, who know what the ups and downs, what the flaws are, where to avoid the pitfalls. As I gave you, I made one mistake and it cost me $250,000. In fact, it was 300,000 because we had put 50,000 into that property, which also went. Yeah. So in the end, the cost was 300,000. Um, yeah. So it's those things those pitfalls that you can be guided to avoid and to ensure that your business continues on its positive trajectory. Um, and you'll get the best out of your business as you grow.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Learned so much on this series, talking about social impact investment. Thank you for what you shared. Um, you started from a very humble beginning, and you've definitely successful in what you're doing in this space. And I know how hard you work. I know you said you'll be brave going forward, but I think maybe for people that are starting, don't be over brave, because now you have the experience. You can do
Of
a
course,
lot more than what it is. So for people, I think to get to the level you are now, yeah, maybe take some brave steps to do things, but I mean, you are at a different trajectory, so people needs to be very aware of that. So, but really, thank you for so much that you've shared. Without any doubt, either for someone that is just starting out as a care, as a nursing, there's a lot they can get from this. Looking like this is a journey. Someone similar I've been to, maybe someone that's just starting their first property, and or maybe someone that is just thinking about um, buying their first buy-to-let investment or social housing or something, whatever it is, or someone thinking of supporting the government for social impact investments. There's definitely something for everyone to take away from this. So this is definitely, without any doubt, being a very good section. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing us your journey. Thank you for the learning tips you've given on this program today. And we'll definitely come back. Like I said, there is a different. I know you're like one with a coat of many colors. So there possibly would be something else we would tap into for next time. But honestly, I'm very grateful for your time today, talking about your business, about supported accommodation and related. Really, really thank you. Um, any parting words before we close today's show?
no, I want to say thank you as well for having me, Deji. I feel very honored to be on this platform this very inspiring platform. I would say more appealing to people in our community. My parting words is we need our perspective on investment should always be focused on growth, not overnight growth, but long-term growth. And I find my experience has been that property is one of the best avenues that you can have that long-term growth. And I would always encourage anyone who is out there doing whatever they're doing, make sure you get on the property ladder, especially if you're in the United Kingdom. Make sure you get on the property ladder. Get support from people like Deji to get that first mortgage of yours and be on that ladder. As they call it, it's a ladder. So a ladder, you start from the first rung and then you work your way up the ladder. But make sure you put your first step on that first rung of the ladder, and then you can start going up the ladder and have real wealth that you can either pass on to next generations and have intergenerational wealth. And through property, you can do that. It's one of the avenues that you can easily do that, and ensure that you leave a legacy for yourself and for your family in the future. So that will be my passing remark. I know there are lots of other things out there that seemingly make a lot of money very quickly, um, but my experience has been I've had a strong foundation with property, and it has enabled me to then have that privilege to explore other avenues, but knowing that you've got that strong foundation that you can leverage from and still come back to after that.
Definitely. Wonderful parting words from you. Really appreciate that. I mean, think long time, think generational wealth, think about not just yourself, think about succession. So, thank you for highlighting that. So, we'll catch you on the next one. I'll do a little bit more on the series of social investment because a lot of people are interested in this topic currently. So, thank you, Byron. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you too, Deji. Thank